And pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All board members in favor? Of the agenda. Moving second to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion passed 7-0. Comments from the superintendent?
Sure. Well, as Jackie is winding down her time on the board, I'm going to have you come on up front here and we get a picture of you as the board president here. 4 years, all of it a dream, I'm sure. But you have to get double credit because how long were you on the interlocal board? Okay, so you get 8 years credit too. That's how that would work. I'm not sure if it's a big one like 10. But anyway, so come over there and go over there. I'll get a picture.
Sure.
That's good. So it looks good. Thank you very much for all your work. That's fine. So you can catch in your vacation days.
Oh, I can now.
You can do that.
Now?
Sure. Yeah, and anything you got left? Yeah.
I already know after the last couple of weeks, I don't have a lot left. I want to thank the board members for the last week for all the late nights and good interviews. We had tough decisions tonight. And I want to thank Levi for all the extra work he's put in this last week, and Lori Henry for showing our candidates around town.
Thank you very much.
Consent agenda.
It appears we got the bus. We're not the bus, the van. I saw that. Check went through.
Oh, for the van that was approved a while ago.
A while back.
Okay.
Yeah, I just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did we get the van?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's why it was. I'd have to check with Jim for sure.
Yeah, it's here.
Okay.
Jim told me it's here. They ever
I was
used
gonna
it.
say, I assume that's why my check was cut, but
Maybe he wanted the votes because he wanted to ask for another one.
Could be.
well, he just got rid out.
Yeah. Sorry.
For approval, consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Moving second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion passed 7-0. Levi, any comment from the public?
No.
Facility plannings update.
All right, Tucker, Lewis.
Yeah.
Zach.
Yep. Zach's got,
this time. Just Zach.
Zach's going to get set up to go through things here. So we are at the end of what we've been saying is phase one, which is to go through and identify challenges and opportunities. We've been having meetings and going through your buildings and stuff like that since the summertime. And we were able to accomplish all of our goals as far as going through all the information in the buildings and getting surveys and all that. And so we're going to go through that tonight. There's a lot of information in this. Most of this information is something that we use to do the next phase, phase two. And at the end of this presentation, we'll talk about what that's going to look like. But I think the big takeaway is that there was some pretty good input from your buildings. And there was pretty good survey data. There was pretty good turnout for a first community meeting when we're not putting plans up on the board, and there were some good questions and stuff like that. So I would call it a pretty successful phase one as far as finding out what we need to look at. The big takeaway is that the group coalesced around 5 key issues, and Zach will hit on those. But we're not going to go through everything tonight, or we would be here for a long time. But if there is something that you want us to dive in on, just stop Zach and ask him. For the 3 board members, which I appreciate, have been part of all these facility committee meetings and directing us and making a lot of decisions on which way to go. And how to have meetings and then even speaking at meetings. So with that, I'll turn it over to Zach, and then at the end, we'll just follow up with what next steps looks like. So.
Okay. So this, what I'm going to go through and what it is, it's a copy of what we presented to the community, used for the community meeting. With then what's been inserted is some of the input that we've received from the community meeting. So a lot of this you've seen is the startup, just the explanation of why we work through a master plan, what it's the tools that it's going to provide for you as you guys go to ultimately make decisions about the future of the district and from a facility standpoint. But we use this to, as we met with the community, to really understand why is it important to create a master plan so that you have kind of a roadmap to move forward with, understanding who those stakeholders are. There's committees, or there's a facility committee, there's building administration, there's board of education, there's staff in those buildings, and ultimately there's community members, all that have some level of interest in understanding what these improvements might be for these. And as we work through this, it's a continued community conversation about what are the needs within the district, and then ultimately how are we going to address those needs with the district, finding out, what are the strengths of the facilities, what works well, but also are there opportunities for improvements within the district facilities. And then ultimately the goal is to find consensus and build consensus around some key improvements that maybe need to be made within district facilities. And so as we presented with the community, these are the things that we worked through in that community meeting. Just a brief on the timeline of where we started and where we're at today. Started in in July, in the summer of 2025. Worked through walking through those buildings, interviewing with staff, conversations with staff, ultimately coming to November community meeting, and then today kind of a recap of what we've done today. So as Tucker mentioned, there were about 60 people at that community meeting. We used a tool that allowed people to have some interaction in that meeting to provide some feedback. As we started, I would like to just know who's in the room. The majority of them were parents, some staff, community members, and then some other people that probably maybe were not as directly associated with the school board or community. But about 60 people, 57 respondents. We walked through just an understanding of the district, number of students, staff, and just the boundary of the district. We talked through just a very high level understanding of each of the buildings, understanding how those buildings are being used, looking at are there spaces that have operational challenges within those buildings. And so we did that in each building, looked at elementary school, middle school, and the high school. And also this is kind of, if this is phase one, this was probably phase 1A that really was that facility assessment component to really analyze, looked at all the kind of functional components of the building, physical condition, but also the kind of the educational space, program conditions in the buildings and whether they existed or didn't exist. As you see, this is a tool to just compare. The green is things are in good shape. Necessarily don't need as much improvements to it. As you can see and suspect, the middle school is mostly in green, a little bit of yellow there. The elementary and the high school, kind of middle of the road, some green, some yellow. The elementary school, as you can suspect, lower on the score, more needs identified within the elementary school. So as Tucker mentioned, those kind of 5 things that came out of those conversations of improvements that were really consistent across the district in all the buildings. Need to provide secure entries, being able to control how people come and go into those buildings. Identification or identifying and locating special education resources throughout the building to meet the needs of all students. Looking at kind of funneled into academic space challenges, looking at just functional space within, whether it be classrooms, whether it be cafeteria or gym space, whether it be some of those other pull-out rooms that are needed. Just the challenges that exist with those spaces. Talked a lot about gym space, the size of your district, the number of students that you have, the fact that really you've got 2 gyms in the district. Elementary school has a small space that's used for gym and cafeteria, more of a large multi-purpose room than a gym. Talked about that. And then lastly, talked about career and tech education, those pathway programs, what you currently offer, what are some opportunities to increase those opportunities for students in the district.
Is this ranked like priority wise? Like is this something top need?
No, they're not prioritized. It's really, they're the, it's not prioritized.
This was out of staff feedback. So we took the staff feedback, and then the facility committee took all of that staff feedback because they all did top 10s. And then the facility committee worked to condense that down into, we didn't put every oh, my carpet's bad, right? So we took the big ideas that came out of the staff meetings, and then that's what we got out of that when we talked with the facility committee. So the facility committee condensed down what the staff came up with.
Understood. Thank you.
So just a high-level look at those program needs and looking at and talking about secure entries and what that means for the building. And it's really about being able to get people in the building, but stop them, make them check into the office space before they're either allowed into the building or whoever they're coming forward meets up with them. These diagrams look at kind of how currently functions. The red arrow is how they currently function and the ability for people to just walk into the building. They either have an opportunity at the elementary school. They can walk straight in. There is a door that goes into the office space, and then but there's free access into the building currently. The middle school, it has direct access into the building. All of them have the door buzzer or the camera phones that do provide some level of control, but we like to really have people check in with the office. So force them into, when school's in session, force them into the office and be able to check in before going into the building. And so these arrows just illustrate the red is what you can currently do. The blue is the preferred route where you're checking in to the building, to the office before going into the building, and various levels of construction needed to make them more secure. So with that, we kind of presented that and asked if people felt that was a priority. And what you see here is the feedback from that. Of the 57 people, most of them strongly agreed that is a priority in the district. As we talked about special education, knowing that you do have special education resources throughout the buildings, but also looking at what else is needed sometimes in the special education, whether it's in a suite or located throughout the building. A lot of it is, life skills program space to do, oftentimes with a kitchen in it, to do life skills training, some of your regular PT, OT spaces, a lot of office space, whether it's office space for staff that's in the building or office space for staff that is more transient or other service providers that come in and potentially either have office space or space that they meet with students in the building. Laundry rooms, changing rooms, shower spaces, if you need to provide that for students. Self-regulation rooms, where students are able to either be directed or self-direct into a space that they're able to calm down from the get out of the setting that they're in and go into a space that to cool down in. So just not saying that you need all these or that you're lacking all these, but as we look at special education in really K through 12, what are those components that can be included in special education services in the buildings? Just looking at where those are provided in each of the buildings, do have adequate space for that, and it is all the buildings kind of spread out through the building. In some instances, some of those rooms are have a lot of functions going on in them and need to expand a little bit to provide the space that's needed. Also asked a similar question about investigating solutions and providing opportunities for the special education programs or services within the building. Again, general agreement that that's something that the district should consider. When we look at academic space challenges, that can be either just outdated finishes, outdated functional sort of uses of either classrooms, restrooms, some circulation issues in the buildings. Oftentimes, group space, resource space outside of the classroom for either students or staff to be outside of the classroom. Those kind of spaces oftentimes are lacking in older buildings. Noted about at the elementary school specifically, the cafeteria and the gym size, especially spaces that dual use those functions. Oftentimes you're either the scheduling is problematic or the space is just not really conducive. Other than it's a large space, it's not really conducive to the functions that are being shared in those spaces. And lastly, just looking at as we look at office space, but also workroom space, conference room space. That's probably the number one thing that we see older buildings lacking. Is they have maybe one conference room, or they had one conference room that's now been turned over to a resource room or something else. So a space that staff can meet with parents or meet with students or other service providers in the building. So, and then looking at spaces that are whether they're just need a refresh or they're potentially underutilized in terms of how they're being used today. Asked a question, maybe a rhetorical question, but which building has the most need? And overwhelmingly, elementary school was identified as had the most needs within the district from a space standpoint. We started talking a little bit about this, and again, as Tucker mentioned, we didn't get into solutions. This was all about kind of understanding that baseline and kind of a fact finding and getting input, so that as we move into developing, looking at different solutions, we know we have some guidance on what should be considered. We asked the question about whether looking at the elementary school specific, whether people lean towards building a new building or renovating, and it's a little bit in the middle, a little bit to the new construction side, but I think the guidance from the takeaways from this when we go to developing scenarios, we're going to study what does what is the program lacking in that building. What can we accommodate through renovations, potential additions to that building, and then potentially what would a new construction look like for an elementary school. So we get into scenarios, those will be some of the scenarios that we'll study. We also asked, and I've got some printouts of them that I'll hand out, because it's always kind of interesting to see. We just had some open-ended questions that, allow people to not necessarily rank something, but just open-ended, what do you believe are the greatest priorities at the middle school and high school? And so these were some of the, you can see Jim pops up several times in this, special education, security, some of the wood shop and ag shop components, locker room improvements. This is just a snapshot I'll hand out at the end, the kind of the raw data that we collected from these open-ended surveys. It's interesting to see, we said Jim one time, we listed those 5 priorities, but you can start to see the open-ended questions. You can start to see, the weighting of those and how many times some of those components were mentioned in those, in that feedback. Just as we look at, what at the elementary school gym there in terms of the size that it is and what's recommended, from really recommended from a full-size gym, but also then a separate cafeteria space is what we would normally see, just because of the scheduling challenges, but then also just the competing uses of activity space, gym space, and having things like tables and coolers in those gyms. And then looking at gym space at the middle school, noted the kind of the undersized lack of seating for the size of the district. Also, just that means you've got a smaller gym when you don't have as much seating in there. And then at the high school, just kind of it's right at the kind of the cusp of recommended sizes. You've got kind of a unique shape on the circular gym there. Maybe not the most efficient use of space, but it is a large enough gym for generally for high school athletics, but just kind of also the lack of additional gyms creates hindrances for practice and other scheduling. So we asked that question about opportunities for additional gym space, and people were highly in agreement that that's something that should be considered through this to serve both academic and athletic needs. We looked at the career and tech ed spaces, kind of those limitations of the wood shop, the way it's set up, possibility of, the space is good, but just the way it's organized in terms of this kind of central floor area, and then 2 shop spaces on either side make for kind of maybe smaller spaces than what's needed in terms of being able to do large projects in a safer manner. And so oftentimes in spaces like this, we've gone in and, cleaned them out, renovated them, opened them up so that they're kind of a more conducive to modern equipment that you have in there, and just providing some more open space by kind of cleaning up the floor plan and reorganizing the way the rooms are laid out. And then similar in terms of the ag shop, metal shop, and just the current organization and structure of that building is lends itself to a bunch of small rooms. In reality, you need just big open shop and workspace. And so looking at scenarios, opportunities to kind of rethink how these buildings are done. We think that buildings are probably of adequate size and in decent condition. They just need to be reorganized and opened up within them. looking at, talking about, and this was feedback that we heard from the staff, is pathways that exist. And then what are some of those pathways that could be considered in the future? Some of those are shop type space. The others are more classroom based. And so as we look at looking at scenarios to address career and tech education, it'll be a combination of those shop and egg spaces, but then also classrooms type spaces as well. High agreement that continue to explore opportunities for additional career and tech pathways in the district. So this just looks at that feedback that we went through on each option and just puts on the page. Really recognize that all four of those five, or all of those priorities that were addressed through staff, the community was in general agreement that those are their priorities as well, and that should be studied going forward. Also asked about other needs that people in the community meeting I felt were important. Some often parking comes up, parking and traffic flow, playground space, weight room space, some band and choir, size of those classroom spaces. And so that's a summary of what was presented at the community meetings, but then also some of the feedback that we received at the community meetings. And I've got not necessarily going to go, or not going to go through them, but just the open-ended questions. I think there's enough for everybody there, but open-ended questions and responses that we received at that community meeting.
So, so for next steps, I just want to make a couple of points. One, typically at a community meeting where you're not putting plans on the screen, it's hard to get attendance. And for you, I told everybody, if we got 20, 30 people there, we'd be happy. And you had almost 60. So that was really good turnout. So you've got the community's attention. We know that this isn't the entire group of the community that's going to weigh in and vote on this. And I told Ian after the community meeting that when you start putting plans on the screen, that's when you start to get people. And we did encourage everybody that was at that meeting to invite their friends. So as we work up towards the next community meeting, because the community meeting is kind of the culmination of each phase, to start talking about it around town and letting everybody know. I would give credit to the leadership of the facility committee because the staff did not as highly push CTE as being one of the priorities. And the facility committee and that's their job as leaders, is to say, hey, we want to think about, not just if we're going to spend money, let's not just do the same thing. Let's advance things forward. So it was kind of neat to see the community, the people that were in that room be so affirmative of that suggestion. So that was a nice piece. We did have the people in the room when we weren't planning on asking questions and having people, or we weren't planning on having commentary, and everybody was quick to jump on wanting to discuss new elementary versus renovated in addition elementary. And we assured them that we were going to make sure that we do our due diligence and look at different types of scenarios and run cost analysis on that, so that we're not just picking one and that's it and it's over. So as regarding your question about prioritizing, as we go through phase two, when we get towards the end of phase two, that's when you're going to start to see some of that prioritizing from the community and the leadership on, we told everybody you're not going to be able to tackle everything. You're probably not going to be able to financially afford to do everything that you want to do. And that's not your job. Your job is just to move the ball down the field. And set the next board up financially to be able to do what's next. And so when we move into phase two, the true next step is we've got a ton of data and we have a ton of clues to go work on as far as for Zach and myself to start doing our work as far as options and pricing and getting financial folks involved and all of that work. And it's probably going to seem like it goes quiet a little bit because we're going to be doing the construction and option work. And we discussed that today, that we think that we're going to probably get back together with starting to throw some options, like having some options with pricing, with affordability at the end of February, first part of March. And that's when we'll start moving back into another round of facility committee meetings and staff meetings and community meeting as we move towards a master plan wrap up in May. So what we're not telling you as a part of a master plan, this is what we should go do. This is all data from what your issues are and what your community thinks. And then we put that all together in a master plan. And then you would have time to debate over the summer or whatever you want to do to start figuring out what you actually want to do to move forward. It doesn't mean that whatever is in the master plan is what you have to do. We always know there's tweaks. So we know that when we come back with options at the end of February, first part of March, that you all are the facility committee, staff's going to have ideas, they're going to have input. We're going to continue to tweak on that information as we move towards the master plan. But then when we're going to have a community meeting, there's going to be further feedback that I'm sure that we'll tweak that some more. So the master plan is not like a bow on it, like that's what we're doing. The master plan is hey, this is the end of all of the feedback. Then if you want us to go start making detailed changes, we can do that. So that's what the next 6 months looks like. And then where we go from there is going to be kind of up to you guys. So if you don't, it's not, if we, the input that we would be asking is if we start running into something that we're like, hey, before we go too far down this road, we might have a quick teams meeting or something like that to kind of circle up with the facility committee. We won't be doing a whole bunch of staff surveys as we work through this because this is construction and design work as far as evaluating program and costs and square footage and stuff like that. So we want to make sure that the next time we come back with you, we really have something to discuss. And that's when it gets exciting because when you start putting ideas out there and costs, that's when you get people's attention. And so that's what phase two will look like. I think it's been a very successful, very organized, your community has done great. Done this many times and it's been very efficient. So
our goal is to come back to you with starting to develop those scenarios, and Sucker mentioned having some high-level concepts put to it, but also cost information associated with it so that you can understand the true ramifications of each of the different scenarios.
And some things cost money, a lot of money, and some don't. Like that, you could see the secure entry thing. It's a high priority. Probably not that hard to do. So,
and different options to do different levels of it.
Yeah.
There'll be within each of those, there may be, here's a couple of low-hanging fruit of secure entry components that, could be handled out of capital outlay projects.
Yep.
As well, or things that you could bite off and say, yeah, we can do that next year in this manner.
Yep. And there's also, when you see CTE, gym, and elementary school, those are pretty big cost implication ideas. And special education can be, depending on how significant it is. But if we can kill, one of the things that Zach and I are going to work on is if we can kill more than one bird with a stone, we can. So like if you start doing, new construction, if we can tackle a couple of these priorities with one option, then it really makes an impact because stretch that dollars. There's some synergies with some of these priorities, I guess is what I'm saying.
Questions or comments? Or
Glad I'm not you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, fellas.
Yes.
I'm safe for that.
I'm impressed with the
I've been to community meetings where it's just the board there.
Yeah.
That way until about 3 minutes until.
Right.
So
I've heard clapping after a community meeting before, and they clapped. So that was right after Chris.
Yeah, right.
For Greg.
Trust me, it was not.
Right. Item I, KASB, Single Falls Records.
All right, so consider this kind of a first read. I've attached a couple of documents. One is it's going to be the sheet that looks this way. They call it kind of the red line. It's a summary of what's new, and it'll tell you whether or not, you should review and adopt, or whether it's suggested, or whether, it's whatever you prefer. A couple of things I'm going to walk you through a couple of them just real quickly here. The executive session, I think that's pretty easy to agree with. The second one is KSB membership in order to be going, in SBA. I don't think it's anything we would really look at here as far as an SBA. It's really not very germane to our needs at this time, but it could be another way. Graduation is really just some verbiage. Then the next, use of artificial intelligence. We don't have a policy about that really, because nobody else does, and so now we're really starting to get there. I don't know that policy's ever going to be able to keep up with practice and with innovations. It's going to be really, really difficult. So I predict this is something we're going to be getting updates on frequently. So this is really, I'd say, the maiden voyage of it. I have actually emailed you the actual policy itself. I want you to be able to sit down and take a look at it as opposed to just looking at this summary. Okay, that's not going to do it justice. So I have actually emailed that to you. So it's also here in Board Docs too, but we emailed it to you so you can do that and always around your own time. So I think that's really something to look at. How many of you, does anybody feel like that's something that impacts, Jackie, you're in education? Is that, you have an AI? Are you seeing unintended things going on, or very intended? How do we deal with it?
Yeah, but I think the point of having a policy, you had said it, is that it's not a policy that's going to keep up with how fast ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini is moving, but having the parameters in which you can play outlined. I know that, we have an internal employee AI policy, and we have an external student AI policy, because there are a lot of really great things you can do with AI, and we're working on adding AI into our LMS to allow instructors that capability to use AI for content. But we've also enlisted the service of some third-party vendors with our IT team and our compliance team and our legal team to make sure that we're telling students what the expectation is and holding them accountable to that expectation, and using some third-party vendors that have checked for plagiarism and stuff like that. But it's not going away. I'll tell you, the last 5 years of conferences that I've been to in the post-secondary ed world, every single one of them, every presentation is about AI, period. And I'm a user. It's not scary. Every email I draft has been proofread by AI at some level. And I think it's yay KASB for putting it together. I think they gave a shout out to Derby. Was it Derby that put it out there? And I think, my parting 2 cents is that we need to have the guardrails in place.
It'll be a game, I don't call it an arms race or a game of whack-a-mole, but, some things are really coming down the pipe too, and really on the side of education. Our United Schools Administrators now has the open source AI presents some problems as far as privacy, everything from and student records, things like that. How much of that is what's getting sold out there as far as what our students might end up doing. You're going to see it's already out there. Brian, did you attend that session with me, KSB?
I attended yeah.
Yeah, the same one, and we're talking about this closed system basically, so that you can really kind of put the parameters and where students can go with that. And, you know, as I look forward, I think, well, that's probably the way to go for students. Yeah, I use Gemini, you know, too, but, I don't know. It's hard to really say exactly what it's going to be. So there's policy. I'll ask you to take a look at that. And then on the back side, I did call this to their attention. There's some narrative about controversial issues there. And the phrase is, while it can be acceptable to seize the opportunity, that's not the correct word. So I did point that out to them. So it will become seize the opportunity.
I was just looking for a power cable and got the big time. They're different than others.
I can run a down if you can hang on.
So anyway, really there's some stuff related to, related to law. And really, I'm just gonna let you look at that. That's your first read. And just know if you do have a membership to KASB Plus, that's where these things come. But it can be a little bit of a burden to get in there sometime. If you ever want, like what I printed out for you for the AI stuff, if you want that for anything else, let me know. I'll get it to you. So I'm in it all the time, so pretty easy. Okay. That is all I have as far as that goes.
One point about the AI. Point number 5. I just
In the
on the, what you sent,
Oh,
what
yeah.
you sent us. I looked at it just briefly.
Yeah.
I would just kind of like to know how we might implement it, or how we actually follow our policy. It says properly cite or disclose the use of AI generated content used in assignments, teaching materials, and official communication in accordance with this policy, or risk disciplinary action or loss of credit for plagiarism. So it makes sense, but how do we implement that with fidelity and
how do you catch it?
Yeah.
That is the arms race.
So it's one thing if you're writing the term. I mean, it's like the obvious thing is I'm writing a 5-page essay or something like that. That's easy because you have citations. But if you use it even in a proper manner for some regular assignment, I think it just lends itself to be able to have different interpretations at different times. And so before we adopt a policy that is going to be difficult to enforce the same way across the board, I would kind of be interested to see how we might do that.
A couple of different vendors, and any assignment, homework, paper, etc. gets run through the vendor for the check. And it comes back like red, yellow, green. And then it's on the instructor, right, to kind of validate that it was plagiarized or it wasn't.
Well, this is incumbent on the student, is the way I would read that, to disclose ahead of time, basically give a citation that they used AI.
If you email in your assignment and I run it through this vendor that checks it, it's all done like electronically.
It's to catch it after the fact.
Yeah.
Right.
Catch it after the fact.
Doesn't the
We
vendor,
teach students to actually cite it ahead of time, just like.
Right. Yeah.
doesn't staff already have something in place to be able to run?
You can, but there's nothing they have that's going to be able to keep up with that. That's an arms race that AI will beat AI every time. Does that make sense? I mean, you're going to have to really use common sense and know the students well enough to know this is not their voice. If you want to talk about those 6 traits of writing, this is not how they write. This is not how they talk. This is not how.
The same way you teach
But it's wrought with problems. One thing to keep in mind about these, you don't have to adopt one engineering. It can take a while. You can adopt
Well, I think the point,
some not.
it makes sense to have one, and I think the point on its face is fine. I'm just kind of curious about implementation of it. Like I said, in essays, that's a no-brainer because you should use citation. If you're using it for, I don't know, a math assignment where you have to write a story problem or something like that. I don't know. I'm just something that doesn't necessarily lend itself to citations. Yeah.
Write a fictional story.
Or I don't know, any number of things that aren't the traditional ways you do it. It would just be nice to have, I don't know, kind of a theme on the way that we're going to expect students to respond and cite that so that they're not hanging themselves all the time. That's all. So.
Can't tell you what that is.
No.
looking at Lori. She probably has ideas.
But, I think about, I was talking to Lori, talking about, curriculum mapping, prioritization of standards, and how much time goes into it. But we did hear a story about, a district that decided they're going to take the AI approach it's ended up just taking just as long because now they've had to really sit down and decide whether or not that's, so the time saver was the lack of, skipping the collaboration part. Well, guess what, folks? They had to come back to the collaboration part anyway. I don't know that really did anything more than give you a starting list, which is valuable. Be interesting to see, but I do see that certainly productivity-wise, it'd be a great tool.
Superintendent's report.
All right. Mr. White, you got anything for us today?
Not a lot, some. That's right. Couple of things. Of course, we all know we had our first snowfall. I think things went pretty well. PJ seemed to be on it. Did it really well. Jeff and Chris were on top of it and got the equipment ready ahead of time. And all the custodians pitched in and got the buildings where they are cleaned around their edges. Went relatively smoothly. It was nice to have just 3 inches for a practice room. But yeah, that went well. The other thing is that about a week and a half ago, I believe it was, 2 weeks, Mr. Kettler and I toured the building at the high school with a couple of gentlemen from the Great Plains ADA Center. They came to guide us on the needs that we might see in the building to meet our ADA compliance. Overall, they said that our high school actually looked very good. A few minor things, such as like the height of fire extinguishers or the ability to maybe put another handle on the doors that are lower, that are accessible. Pretty much, and anything that protrudes from the walls greater than 4 inches actually have to be or have some type of a leading edge for someone that may be visually impaired and be using a cane so that they could identify those items and not run into them. So we need to look at some ways to.
Think of the trophy cases at the high school. Fine. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A few other things were like in the science rooms and down in that ag and shop were like the IWAR stations maybe were put up too high. We needed to lower them slightly. Some of the mirrors in the bathrooms and things like that. So, it was very insightful to see it from that perspective. About all I got. No major issues going on right now. Other than had a little bit of a water issue at the elementary school this weekend. It ended up being a sump pump that was out. Replaced it and water went down. Nothing major.
Anything else?
Okay.
I have up our Chiefs of School Improvement. So last week, we went to Greenbush for School Improvement Day. We did this a year ago as well. So really it was about going in and reporting out and kind of self-evaluating and then sharing with other school districts what we had done in our first cycle. So this is a cycle that, it's really weird when your cycle's in the middle of the year. It's kind of, you're working in both years at the same point or at the same time. If you remember last time, our they call it fundamentals, really kind of our focus was quality instruction. And to you guys, that really means HIPs. Okay, so all this learning that our teachers have done with HIPs. So we reported it out about that. Our strengths are what we think went really well. And I'll just ask your leadership team back here, how did it go? How do you think we fared? How did we look compared to other districts? What comments did you hear? Yeah, that's you guys. All at once.
I thought it went well. We had some positive feedback from other districts and they asked some questions and so.
But actually, they said to us, you have how many questions or concerns again? What was the number? Zero. So when we went to the evaluation part of this, you don't need to work on. And congratulated us. Wow.
Awesome job, guys.
So they worked really hard on that. So now it's just like, now we just start this thing all over again without losing focus on that previous fundamental. So we had been working on this, I guess, working ahead a little bit. And really our fundamental will be structured literacy. So as HIPS was to quality instruction, or vice versa, quality instruction was the HIPS, structured literacy is to, somebody back there's got the answer. There, you've heard it, letters. So structured literacy. That will really be the fundamental, but that looks a little bit different because not everybody is a ELA reading teacher of early reading, those type. That doesn't apply to everybody the same way, but everybody still has to have professional learning in those areas. So that would look a little bit different than Mr. Armin for Mr. Armin at the shop, and maybe from the Santa King kindergarten. You can understand that. So, Lori, of course, we've talked to you about the letters cohort groups. What's our number of people who joined the letters cohort group?
33
33.
In volume 1, 3 in early childhood,
36.
2 in volume 2, and well, 4 if you count Danielle and I in volume 2.
So up over 40 altogether. But some of those people, it may shock you. I mean, I see high school social studies teacher doing this. And I'm going to tell you, that's a stretch. And I don't think he'd mind me saying that. It probably blew his mind a little bit to hear the things coming at him that might seem more natural for Mrs. Anna King in kindergarten to hear when we're talking about phenomes and whatever else. But what is,
Phonemes.
phonemes, not, yeah, but big words, and, phonics and all that, but it just blows their mind. I watched it very much, and I watched it. They were just like, what in the world? Of course, the elementary people were nodding along, going, and everybody else is, its mind was blown. So really interesting to see. So at the January board meeting, we will present the action plan. While we were there, we also talked with the consultant, showed them our action plan. We've got just a tiny bit of tweaking to do on that. But it could be ready tomorrow if we wanted it to be, but we will present it to you in January. We'll ask for board approval just like we did last year. Then I'll submit it the next day, and I'm sure it'll be approved. Say that word for names. Thank you, you phenoms. Appreciate it. All right. PD days, a lot of those have been letters here lately and HIPs and some curricular work as well. We had 2 days, Monday and Tuesday before Thanksgiving, doing Capturing Kids' Hearts. Rhonda was part of that, and Eileen, and I was as well. Danielle's already done it. So it was good stuff, but I'll submit to you that metal chairs for 2 days in the Fisher Center are, your mind can absorb only so much. So it wasn't always the best. But it went very well, Rhonda.
It went really
Yeah. And I think our secondary teachers seem to really agree with that. So successful training goes. 26, 27 calendar, it is that time. I'll refresh your memory. Last year we got it approved in I think we may have approved it in January last year. What did I turn around and ask you to do though in about April and May? Change. We're going to take our time. Laura and I are going to do a little bit more front loading before I even sit down with teachers and staff and really have a better understanding of what PD days are needed so that we don't have to make a change. So I won't have that for you in January. My goal is to have it for you in February. So, and I don't think proving it you can probably prove it in March and be fine. So, just some days. We are winding down the semester. Maybe you notice an uptick in Christmas fall and winter programming as far as music and arts go. Finals 17th and 18th, Rhonda, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Teacher work day is January the 2nd. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's
Right. Yeah, that's a Friday. Am I correct? Yes. Okay. And we do that. I'm not sure if you know, that's a flex day for teachers. They can come in and work in the room. They can do it from home. But either way, they're going to have to get in there sometime over break and do their work. We just don't want to pin them down to a specific time. Yet want them to get credit for doing work. There's no way they get started second semester without it. Yeah, so we're back at it. Like that. So, you see the dismissal on the 19th. What question?
December already.
I can't believe it. Yeah, the semester's already done. Days are long, but the months are short.
Item K, special ed report, we have done, or we're meeting tomorrow night. I think it's been doing interviews last Wednesday, so. I'll be tomorrow. All right, how long do you need for this first one?
Yeah.
Executive session to
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm sorry, I want to give, now, this one, let's go, yeah, I think 10's fine. We'll okay.
executive session to discuss matters relating to actions favorably affecting a student for 10 minutes. All in favor, say, oh, sorry.
I'll make that motion.
Second to go in executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passed 7-0.
Hey, can we get a check?
I'll get you one.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bonnie? You can take mine.
Should he actually sitting in the school table? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Sorry.
We were in executive session for 10 minutes, is there any action? No action. I just do that anything.
Hershey's Kisses. That's
Do we need 10?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to.
All right, we're gonna go back into executive session for 10 minutes to discuss non-elected personnel.
So moved.
Second. Yeah, second to go to executive session for 10 minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passes.
Missed that.
Oh, I think it's there.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
If you name it down.
Any action following the executive session, just take it.
You got it.
Yeah.
All right. I move to accept the recommendation for Addison Williams as a classroom intern for 12.5 hours per week.
Second.
Moved in second to accept Addison Williams as a classroom intern. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passed 7-0.
I move to recommend Dastin Bruning for the assistant high school track coach for the 25-26 school year.
Second.
Moved in second to accept Dastin Green as the HHS assistant track coach. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no. Motion passed 7-0.
I move to accept the recommendation for Dastin Bruning as the assistant high school girls basketball coach for the 25-26 school year.
Second.
Moved in second to accept Dastin Green as the HHS assistant basketball coach. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passed 7-0. All right. How long do you think we need?
We'll just start with 30 again.
I think that's good.
We're gonna go into executive session for 30 minutes to discuss non-elected personnel, and we're staying in here.
Get your
So
folders.
if you could,
I got the folders.
Okay.
Can you please make sure that the camera and the audio is off?